Hi, I'm Wyatt from Beadalon here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and I've got some great tools and techniques to show you today. Let's get started. We're going to be using the banding pliers with square and half round wire. There's a couple of things that you need to know about the banding pliers. There's a double banding plier and there are also single banding pliers. The single banding plier is used, the plunger is the size of square wire. So on one side of one of the banding pliers you have a number 22. That means this plunger right here is the exact size of a 22 gauge square wire. The other side is 24 gauge, and then the other pliers are 20 and 21 gauge. So it covers pretty much the range of square wires that you want to use for setting stones like we're going to do today. The double banding plier is from when you have a stack of square wires on one side and a stack of square wires on the other side of a stone. It's going to go around and you come up to the top and you've got double the thickness of those square wires. So there's one that says 2 by 20, 2 by 21, and a 2 by 22 and a 2 by 24. So there's a lot of numbers in there. The thing you need to remember is the plunger, this guy right here, is what's going to come down and make a double right angle, the exact size of, in the double banding plier case, 2 times the wire diameter, and in the single, 1 times the wire diameter. So that's a quick rundown of the tools. I'll also be using a bent chain nose plier and a cutter. So of course, here at Fire Mountain Gems, they have like about a zillion gems and stones and all kinds of things. So we just decided we would choose something very big, very Swarovski, and kind of flashy. So I'm going to do this stone today. This is a marquise-shaped, very large stone, and I think it's going to make a great pendant. So what you need to do is you need to take some square wire. This is 20 gauge square German style Beadalon square wire, and it's made out of brass. So I'm just going to use the wire straightener. Wire straightener is just these 3 rollers on here, and you just place the wire inside, roll this over, and pull the wire straight through. And you don't put a lot of pressure, but you'd have to do some pressure, and as you pull it straighter, then you can get things rolling. I've pre-cut some to about the right size. So there I've got 1, and this, what I'm going to use today is a stack of 3. So you would cut out your, straighten all your wires, and then put them all together. Then you need to have half round wire. So the square wires are going to be the base of your piece, and then the half round wire is going to come in and be the band, thus the name for banding pliers. So today I'm using 20 gauge half round sterling wire. You can get that in the Fire Mountain on the website and from their catalog. So you're going to cut a piece about, if you're using sterling, I would cut a little bit smaller piece because you don't need that much. We're only going to wrap 3 to 4 times depending on how I feel when I get it started. So with this, we're going to put the 3 wires, these 3 square wires together and stack. So this is going to be our stack. The top wire is going to go to hold the stone from the top, and the bottom wire is going to hold the stone from the bottom. So banding plier, we're using 20 gauge square, so we need to have the banding plier that says 20 on one side and 22 on the other. So the half round wire is placed with the half round facing the plunger. So half round wire goes in, the half round portion is on the bottom here, and the flat part is on the top. So when you depress this just once, that I push just slightly on the side to make that into like this perfect little tiny double right angle. That is the perfect size for 20 gauge square. Now a lot of people will use tape to hold these wires together. I don't like to use the tape because it tends to get goo on your piece. So this is going to bend up from the bottom at about the midway point. So I'm going to want these bands on either side of the stone. So you just make sure that the wires are all nicely stacked. If you can see here that I've got my nicely fitting bottom, which is the double right angle, and I'm just going to hold it with these chain nose, bent chain nose, and then I'm going to pull very tightly to bend that one over the top. Now each time you make a bend, you need to tighten that bend. So I'm going to come back and just tighten from top to bottom. Make sure you get a nice little tight. And this is what has the banding pliers to help people that don't do a lot of this type of work. Getting this first band nice and tight is the key to not having to put tape on your wires. So each time I bend it, I just give it a nice little tug and just keep wrapping this until I reach the point that I think is going to be what I want based on the stone. Now, a lot of people don't do bicolored metals, that being the brass here and the sterling silver half round here. I kind of like to shake it up sometimes, so you might see that I do things a little bit different than other people, but it's sometimes fun to do it a little bit rogue. So we're just going to squeeze these, and I want all of the two ends to be on the same side. Just come in here with a flush cutter and snip that so that that will fold about halfway across the three wires. And then I'm going to tuck that down just like that. So now I've got the first band on there and it's nice and tight. You can move it just a little bit, but you want to be able to do that. And then you make another band on the other side, and then we'll start to form it. So again, we want to go on the 20 gauge side, just push that, and then come over here on the other side at about this a nice distance so that you can have those bands on the about the same place both sides. Bend that down and just tuck that nice and tight. This one do the same. So each bend you have to remember to tighten. That way these bands will stay in place, and there's gonna be what holds the entire setting together. So this is what I was talking about when I said a stack. This is a 1x3 stack. Then we'll have the two end wires come together, and that's where we use the double banding pliers to be able to band that stack. Okay, so we're almost to the point where we can start bending the wires to start fitting the stone. Just have to get these cut. Again, making sure that the end wires are on the inside of the setting so that you don't have anything that the edge of the wire is not exposed on the outside of your piece of jewelry. So just squeeze that down nice and tight. It's not quite centered, so you can adjust these a little bit. And we want these to come up to about the halfway side of the stone. So smaller movements are better than large movements when bending wire. So I'm going to place the bent curved or the bent chain nose pliers in about the place of the center between these two to get our first bend to fit in onto the tip of this stone. So we want that. So I've got a little bit of difference here, so I can just move that down so that it's pretty symmetrical. Now these don't have to be symmetrical. They do in my pieces, but they don't have to absolutely be symmetrical, because sometimes asymmetric designs, if well done, can look really, really good. I prefer symmetry when you can get it. So it's just a kind of a practice in getting the wire to do exactly what you want it without overbending it before you get your nice fit. And you want these to bypass one another so that they're not intermixed and causing you problems. Okay, so now we're getting to where this is fitting a little bit closer. Yeah, we're starting to get it to fit a little better. And you can hold the stone down. I hold it face down, trying very carefully not to scratch the back silver finish on the Swarovski, because that's what gives you all that fire on the front side. All right, so now we're getting it to fit a little bit. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can fit the stone in here. I like to push the bottom wire, well, we're going to call it the bottom wire for now, pull the bottom one slightly so that it starts to retract in here. So you've got that sort of looking like that. And then the top one, we're going to want to do the same thing. What we have to do is we have to have the bottom wire holding the bottom of the stone, and then the top wire is going to hold the top of the stone so that we can hold the stone in place. We will have to stretch the top of this one to come up and over, because the stone at the, this is called the girdle, and this is the table, and the pavilion's down below. Because this up to the table right here is a little bit higher, we're going to have to stretch the top wire open just a little bit. And I use caution if you're using the pliers. You don't want to scratch the wire, because the wire can scratch pretty easily, and we don't want that. So you're going to fit this in here just like this, hopefully. The wires are still moving a little bit. We'll be able to keep that from happening here in just a minute. The bottom wire is not wanting to work here. Okay. It's a fine line to get this to do exactly what you want while holding the stone. But it is possible, and it just takes a little bit of practice to get this together. And you want to be able to protect the end of the stone as well. So we've got that kind of getting in place. So once we're to the point where we've got the stone nicely wrapped with the stacks of 1x3 square wire in the two bands, and we've got the stone so that it's fitting in here well, then you've got to come up to the top side of the stone, and using the bent chain nose pliers, very carefully hold on to the wires and find the center spot, and then carefully adjust the 3 wires by bending and twisting until these wires are pointing straight up at the top of the stone. And this can be a little bit unnerving because you've got to do one side and then hold everything together and come back in on the other side, again holding the 3 wires and bringing the wires up, and make the small bends to get a nice straight line at the top of the stone with those wires. So that's roughly how you need it to be, so that these wires are going to all come together up here at the top, just like that. So we can now start doing some adjusting here to make sure everything's in place. These wires need to be, this wire needs to be up just a little bit more so that the stone will be held in the top. We can push that back down once we get everything tied in. Okay, so attaching these 6 wires at the top requires the banding pliers, the double banding pliers. So I'm just going to straighten these out just a little bit more, so I have no resistance when I start the band at the top. And again, using about, because we're using sterling silver wire, you want to use as not too much, but not too little either. And then I need the 2 by 22, excuse me, 2 by 20. So again, on the end of the banding pliers, it'll tell you what size, what gauge wire this plunger is, and this is a double of 20 gauge. The flat side goes up underneath the plunger, and you just squeeze. Then press these in, and now you've got a double band to be able to catch both of these stacks of wire. Now, the stone does not need to be in this for this portion, which is a good thing because it's hard enough to hold all 6 of these wires as it is without the also having to hold the stone. So we're just going to tuck this in nice and tightly, make sure that we have everything nicely stacked. I'm going to bend this wire over, making sure that the bottom stays where it is. And this is one of the best things the banding plier does, is to be able to hold these 2 stacks together, because this can be quite complicated without this pre-made band to be able to have everything nice and tight. So you just want to bend the wire, tighten it, and each time you get a wrap, it will strengthen this connection up here. Just keep going around slowly and making sure that all those bands are tightened. See, so now we've got a 2 by 3 stack going right there, and just tuck it all in. And it's usually a good idea to leave this and not be completely finished with doing these bands until you've got the stone sitting in your new setting. So I'll just tighten this one, bring that back around to the back. This is the back of our setting, and this is the front of our setting. So this one needs to also go around and down one more time. So that holds the whole mechanism together. Now this should slip right into here, hopefully. And you don't want to force it too hard because it is crystal. And then you've got to have something in the back that's going to hold it. Make sure all of these wraps are nice and tight, leaving these 2 pieces in the back side and ready to be bent over and cut, but don't do the cutting just yet. You got to make sure that this stone is in here and that we've got a single piece of wire coming up on this side, which is now the front, because that's where the top of the stone is. Just kind of adjust it a little bit. Take the top wire here and just kind of push this open just a little bit. And that wire is going to pull over the top of the stone, just like this. You don't want to cover too much of the top of the stone, but you do need to have just enough of that wire lip to hold it in place. And it's going to still continue to be a little bit goosey until you can get the back wires pulled as well. So it's a little dangerous to use the pliers, but sometimes you've got to use the pliers. And you just want to grab just the very last wire and make sure you just have the last wire and just kind of twist it just enough to make it move, and hopefully not miss it like I just did. I've got a very good tight fit on the stone, so it makes it a little bit tricky to get all of these other things to begin to happen. But you want the setting as tightly on the stone as you can get it. Got to get in here with some closer eyes. So you're just going to twist this bottom piece just to tilt it in just sort of like that, making sure that the stone is in place, and then do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now we've got the back side held in place by the tip here, which it moved just a little bit when we twisted these wires, so I'm going to pull it just a little bit to get it back into place. A little adjustment here and there to make sure that that stone is in there. And we're going to pull these over again just slightly. Okay, so now we've got the stone fairly set, so I can push this top one down just a little bit. And because we have a little bit of a lip in the back, which I think I want just a little bit more lip. And we've got this around the front of the stone, excuse me, the back of the stone at the tip, and then this at the top in the back. Now we can start thinking about what we're going to do for the bail. Because we've got everything tied in from the side and the back, we can tighten this up, cut both of these so that they're going to lay across the two pieces, which makes this double. And then we have the 6 pieces of wire coming out the top of our setting. To begin work on the bail. So the bail can be a little interesting. I like to try the top 2 as just strictly a sort of a beauty mark type thing. So you want to decide just how far out you want to come. And we're going to make curls. We're going to do inward curls on the sides. And you should probably measure this. I guess you would measure it to maybe about 1/2 inch on either side. Sometimes measuring is a good thing, sometimes it's not. And then I'm going to work from underneath with these pliers, and we're going to curl them down. Now, whenever you are doing this type of work, you're going to mar the surface of the wire a little bit, but that kind of adds a little bit of texture to what you're doing. So we're going to just grasp this on the end and bend that in as well. And I like to be able to use the bent chain nose so that you can see, if you're seeing at the moment from the camera above, you can just see exactly every move that you're making from not having the pliers in your way. It's really good to have these pliers on the underside so you can see precisely what you're doing and slip as little as possible. And then come back here and cut half of this off and cut half of this off. Now I can start to coil these down by using, again, the bent portion of the chain nose pliers. Squeeze and twist, squeeze and twist, and you can just roll that wire right up on itself. Right down to the surface of that the band. And now you can kind of get the idea of the 2 colors with this, the finish on this Swarovski stone. It's really starting to look very interesting, I think. You just have to twist and grasp. And sometimes it takes a little bit to get it started. And if it's open a little bit like that, you can just close it down and then continue on. So the middle two I like to use as the bail in most instances. And there's a number of ways you can work on a bail. I'm going to do a pretty simple one today and just do a nice loop, and then I'll be able to use these two wires from the back. So we have the front two wires have been coiled, then the middle two wires are going to be moved forward, and then we're going to form a bail out of it, and then the back two wires will be used to secure the bail wire to the back of the setting. So you can move these together for now and just kind of start to make the bail form. And just go from side to side with these the round nose, so that you're always working both of the wires from side to side to make this bail about the same size. So you work from side to side, and then that way you'll get them at about the same size. So we've got the bail set a little bit forward, so that when you put your chain on it, you're going to have a nice. Then bend this wire here so we can get a little wrap on it. And this wire the same way. Be as consistent as you can with these movements. I'm going to press from the back, push that down, and then this wire will go out and around. And the same thing over here. Trying to keep this in as close as we can get it, and wrap that one to the forward position, just like that. Okay, I'm going to change my glasses so I can get in and see what I'm doing here. So these we need to come around the front just enough to be able to be held, and we get a cut, and then we're going to tuck those wires in. Okay, we've got that one. And cutting here. We're going to carefully squeeze those down. Tighten them in just a little bit. And then these two wires can go up and over the back to secure your bail. Cut these, leaving just enough wire on there so you can tuck that in. Don't want any sharp edges if you can avoid it. Come down in there, and then spread them apart if you want the rabbit ear look bail. And then you need to wipe the stone well to get the perspiration and whatever else is on your hands off of the stone, and get a nice bright shiny stone back into this position, and you've got your piece. A little bit of adjustments in certain areas to make sure that you've got all of your wire placed exactly where you want it, and that is one way of a whole bunch of different types of ways of setting one of these big Swarovski stones.